Although if we're also gonna be talking about like one now, Jordan, I don't know if you specifically watched My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia takes from a lot of like Western stuff, and what I've
I've
noticed
watched some of it.
well
Yeah,
what
I've
I've
watched some of it.
noticed
My kids love it, so I have watched some of it.
well one of the things that I feel like is very like similar time and time again whenever I'm watching that show is how many similarities that Deku actually has to Spider-Man, and how they've kind of like taken a lot of the aspects in that character. Spider-Man, I think with his popular, what exactly is it that, because I'm like really trying to think. Spider-Man doesn't have like those ideals. He's a character who isn't really meant to obviously be a purification of good. He's meant to be a representation of like us, people who have day-to-day
Hmm.
Yeah.
responsibilities. And he also has like a more like a good like the idea of principles and how far one must go in order to keep
He,
responsibility.
yeah, he's the most realistic spin on a person just randomly getting superpowers.
Hmm.
You know what I
That's
mean?
why.
Like
Just like
it's
Deku.
really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard for us to comprehend being Superman. It's really hard for us to comprehend being Batman. But we can kind of relate to being bit by a spider and randomly getting powers. That would be wild, you know.
Hmm.
We can actually, approach that from a relatable perspective. We can try to imagine being that person. Whereas with Superman, it's like, whoa, I can't even imagine being that powerful.
Yeah, so that's
You know
just
what I mean?
different level type stuff.
Yeah,
Spider-Man's very, like you said, relatable. Like it could be a
yeah.
regular guy like you, me, or Starblast.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
and the problems that they give him are stuff that we would naturally relate to. Like it's like
yeah,
like he said, it's like it's stuff that he goes through in his day-to-day life that we would too. Getting a job,
yeah,
going to school, dealing with relationships, stuff like that.
yeah,
The most complicated thing that Superman has to deal with in terms of his relationships is just making sure that his love interest doesn't get killed. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yep,
whereas I mean, it's not that they don't ever expand on the whole identity thing with Lois Lane, but like it's not in comparison to Mary Jane or the weird love triangles that Peter has had throughout the series. Like it's so much more complicated than most comic book stories and relatable.
Yeah, because like oftentimes whenever it came to like Superman dealing with like a specific problem, either in order to kind of make it like solve that problem, they'd give him like another power, or they'd just have him like come up with like something on the fly, like super like thing. He needs to get an article done within this specific time. He has a super
super
mind.
flat.
He just like he types it up, and he's done in like 30 seconds. With
My
Spider-Man,
hero,
he doesn't it's not that simple. You see him like having to struggle to get his assignments done, and then also
Yeah,
like, oh, he has to go out there and try to like fight crime while he can, because that's like a life and death matter, but it's also going to be at his own he's gonna get the bad end of the stick for that, because that could possibly lead him to like fail a class or whatever, things
yeah, and
like
we're
that.
not trying to say that the West is the only one that takes from the East. The East definitely takes from the West. My Hero Academia is essentially the X-Men
oh yeah,
of
yeah,
anime as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there are some weird flips to it. Like for example, it's more popular to be a mutant in that series than it is in
yeah,
X-Men. Like it's like
yeah,
the
yeah,
reverse.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
Totally
know what I mean? If
different
you don't
stuff.
have
there's like two
powers
different
in
tones to that.
Yeah,
yeah. But like we're not. But the thing about it is, it's odd. It's very odd that in more cases than not, when Eastern media adapts something from Western media, it becomes extremely popular, and when Western media adapts something from Eastern media, it flops.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like there is something to be said about that.
yeah. Even One Piece is like that. I always thought it was like X-Men, but pirates. That's what it pretty much is. But yeah, it's
Well,
so
One
much
Piece.
more interesting than X-Men. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was well. One Piece. I was about to say One Piece also takes a lot from Journey to the West. Like, there's a lot, even in like with some of the most recent stuff. Like, Luffy
Oh
has a
yeah.
lot of like Sun
Yeah,
Wukong's character
I mean, he's
imprinted
literally
into him.
based on. Here's the thing. What makes Luffy interesting is that we know for a fact that Oda took inspiration for Goku to make Luffy. We know
oh,
for a fact that he
100%.
did,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
something I picked
weird.
on like that. Picked up on.
Which is weird because Goku is inspired from the Monkey King. So there's like this weird thing that's happening
Yeah,
there where the Monkey King was created, Goku was created, and then Luffy was created, and it's just like,
It's like a
he does take from the
never
Monkey
ending.
King. You're right, but like it's he actually takes a lot from Goku himself too. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like the eating,
Yeah.
being
Well, the
active.
eating comes from Monkey King too.
Yeah,
Like
or
a lot of people don't realize that a lot of Goku's like most defining character traits are just the Monkey King's character traits.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
him eating like that is literally just the Monkey King. I mean, they also there is also a scene, and Geekdom 101 did a short about this, which I thought was really cool. There's also a scene where Jackie Chan is eating a bunch of food just like that, in the Drunken Master, and they ask him
Yep.
how he can eat so much, and he says that he's a growing boy. And Goku says the same thing in Dragon Ball when they're asking him how he can eat so much food. He says, "I'm a growing boy." So it's I don't know. That just, to me, the fact that there's those two layers to it, the fact that the Monkey King was already a character who ate a shit ton of food, and he also used that to reference a kung fu movie, the Drunken Master. Like he made a double cross reference, and he does that
Yeah,
throughout the entire series. Like you'll think something is just like a reference to one thing, and it's a reference to like 5 different things, and
Yeah.
that just speaks to how
yeah,
compelling and rich a lot of anime is in comparison to
yep,
a lot of like a lot of this stuff. I don't know. Not everybody is looking for very compelling, rich material, and I think
yeah,
that I might just a little bit be overestimating how many people there are in the world who are interested in that type of experience. But I just think if you want to remedy the issue of having a shortage of new material and a shortage of new concepts, you're gonna have to ignore the fact that some people just want mindless entertainment a little bit. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like you're gonna have to like work a little bit harder and like try to come up with stuff that uh, I just don't think it's a healthy attitude to just assume that the consumer is stupid all the time.
Yeah.
You know what
Like
I mean? Like
Do you think that it would be in some cases like, because it almost seems like with Hollywood trying to come up with new or original ideas, it's actually like being more problematic because like you see with Dragon Ball, the references that Toriyama makes actually I think helps out with the story, having that sense of familiarity and love that's coming from
so
other
you're
forms of
saying
media as well.
too original. Just for clarification, you mean them being too original is
No, I mean like they are trying so hard to make themselves feel like, their own thing that they just end up feeling separate and unrelatable. It's like it's its own like thing that no one can actually relate to because they are doing this for the purposes of trying to be different.
Oh, so basically what you're saying is that their audience is becoming so niche. Like their standard is becoming so it's to appeal to such a specific audience that it's becoming unproductive.
Yeah, She-Hulk is a big example of something like that.
But Marvel in general.
Well, no, no.
Yeah.
She-Hulk is its own can of worms. Like, I don't even want to consider. I don't even want to think about like Marvel and She-Hulk as the same thing. It's that bad of a show. Me and
No, I
Jordan had
mean
a whole
like
thing about that.
where Marvel's at now, they're kind of
Yeah,
like
and it has, just for clarification, I don't want to say, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to clarify, I don't want people to think that I dislike She-Hulk because of any political agenda or stuff like that. It's just they ruined the plot of the film by
The
having
show.
She-Hulk self-aware of the fact that she's in a series,
yeah,
because then it makes all of her prior decisions to that revelation seem fake and irrelevant. Like
yeah,
my criticism for that was not like any sort of weird political agenda or something like that. I actually liked She-Hulk when I first started watching it. It was just like by the time they reached the end of it, like I actually like the She-Hulk comics because it's kind of like Deadpool where they break the fourth wall and stuff like that. Like it is entertaining, but
yeah,
the way that they ended up handling it, it just became self-defeating because once she found out that she was aware she was in a show, then it was like none of her, you don't know for a fact that any of her decisions are actually her decisions.
yeah.
Yeah.
Once you know that she's self-aware in that way, it's like, is all of it fake? Is she aware of the fact that if she does certain things are going to happen? Like, it causes so many questions that destroys the previous buildup of the series that it ruins the entire series.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
like a
heard it
huge
started
problem
off
with it.
good. Yeah, I heard it
Yeah,
started off good. And
I'm with Jordan. Like, I remember like we were watching this like in Geekdom's Discord. Like, we were like watching the show. We were actually like really liking it. The humor was like was okay, was cool. And even though like there was a lot of like criticism that people had for like the episodes and stuff, it's like, oh, it's trying to cater to this agenda. It's like it personally, like, it didn't bother me, because the reason why people were so upset with this is because in their political life they are just like, they are far left or far right, and this
Yeah.
show, because it's like it's being done in a certain way, is just going
Well,
to affect people. I feel like people like, they just need to like separate that type of stuff from the media.
The
that
way
watch.
they
politics
approached
ruin stuff. That's what I think.
the way they approach the difference between the male and the female ego through the Hulk variations of the characters is what
Yeah.
I found. That's what I found was most interesting. A lot of people don't catch on to this, but like at the beginning of that series, the whole point of Hulk teaching She-Hulk meditation and stuff like that, all of that stuff is techniques used to control your ego. So they are associating the Hulk transformation with your ego, like on a psychological level, and that's also why She-Hulk was able to control her form immediately, unlike the Hulk, because the female ego works different than the male ego. And I really liked the way that they went about explaining that. Like, there was some really compelling stuff about the series. But once it got so far and She-Hulk was self-aware of the fact that she was in a show, it made it really hard for me to take everything that all the decisions and all the stuff that she had been through previously seriously.
It's like that made you question the series once they did that.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it makes her
as you
seem,
explain it.
yeah, it makes her character seem less convincing. It
Yeah.
makes the character herself seem like an actor.
I feel like Deadpool is really the only character who can get away with
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know, he's really one of those.
Well, he doesn't ever walk into the writers room and be like, I want this to happen in the plot and I want it to happen right. And he doesn't have that ability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just a
Yeah,
slave to convincing. It makes the character herself seem like an actor.
I feel like Deadpool is really the only character who can get away with stuff like that. You know, he's really one of those.
Well, he doesn't ever walk into the writers room and be like, I want this to happen in the plot and I want it to happen right. And he doesn't have that ability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just a slave to the plot.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him interesting, is the fact that he's self-aware of that. Yeah, and he deals with it in a really manic way where he's like a maniac, you know? And that's cool. That makes it cool. Whereas
that's Deadpool.
And it's not that She-Hulk wasn't cool. Like, it's just that they just sort of dropped the ball on it.
You know? Yeah. And it's just like, in the way that, and we've talked about this too, like the way that She-Hulk was in the comics was like, she didn't know what was going to end up happening. She had no idea what was going to end up, like what was going to go on. So whenever like the writer specifically, like, you know, put in like a path that was making things inconvenient for her, she did complain, but it was like, dang it, now I got to deal with this. This is super annoying. My life sucks. Thanks, writer. Look what you're doing.
And that's not unrealistic. That's not unrealistic.
Yeah. That makes, I never watched the show, but I didn't plan on to, and now I definitely don't want to. Like, it just doesn't, because Marvel, to me, I feel like they hit their peak already. That whole Infinity War, all those movies building up to it, I think that was their peak. They might get high up again, but I don't think they're ever going to get on.
I'm a Robert Downey Jr. fan.
Same here.
That really held a lot of the films in place for me.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the actors that they hired to play the characters. I think a lot of those, not that the writing was like necessarily bad or anything, but like seeing the actors fall so deep into their roles and not knowing exactly how they were going to approach it because they weren't doing the exact same thing as the comics. That's what made it interesting to me. But now it's honestly, it's like they're having the same issue that the comic industry had, but at an accelerated rate. Because what happened with comics is they became so convoluted, and so like everything became so mishmashed and convoluted due to the multiverse and all of these plots. Like, meshing over each other and like like it, you're
Yeah, you had to buy
creating.
these comics to keep up with that one. Yeah, I
Well,
know
it's not.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, but
Yeah,
it just gets to the point to where it's like mind numbing.
yeah.
It's
I
like
definitely agree with
it's
that.
hard. It's hard to keep track of all that, even as a very intelligent. Even if you're one of the most intelligent, like well-intentioned fans out
Yeah,
there, it's like nearly impossible to keep track of all that stuff to the degree that they expect you to. And
yeah.
it's just like, like it's not necessarily that I'm complaining about it because personally I like a lot of the stuff that they come out with that's been convoluted because I like convoluted media. I like
Like
stuff that makes my brain do flips and
like
folds and
into the
like makes me
Spider
be like,
Verse.
whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I like that kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
like, is it smart in terms of an overall approach to the situation? I don't think so.
yeah. Not if you go too much on it. Yeah, like you said, if it's like convoluted, no, you can't do too much of it. But if you do like a
Yeah,
just
also it's so
bit of it,
slow. It's so
yeah,
slow. You can't create like these really big epic concepts and then expect people to wait 10 years to 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 watch the climax and be
yeah.
excited for it. You know what I mean?
Like another 9 years and it'll conclude.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have time for that.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're at a
I
point where it's
agree
just
with
like we
that.
need new media.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Starblast.
No, I
No,
already
I'm
feel
good.
it. Like they need to go to
Yeah, me too.
I
Um, just go.
no. We've been interrupting you. We have barely let you speak. It's your turn, my man. I insist.
But yeah, with comic books, I don't even really read them that much anymore because it's just I feel like they don't catch my like I still read them, but they don't catch my interest as much as if I picked up the latest manga chapter of Super or something. You know, it just doesn't.
Well, Dragon Ball is a very compelling concept.
Yeah,
Uh, I think that's a big part of it, but also comics are they are shoved into our face.
yeah,
You know what I
there's
mean? Like it's hard not to like if you want some sort of Superman material, it's not hard to find it. Like boom,
yeah,
it's everywhere. You know what I
yep,
mean? Like it's literally everywhere. Whereas with Dragon Ball, that is not the case. It is actually a chore to be able to watch, as much Dragon Ball as you want.
yeah,
At least in high quality in the way that it's supposed to be taken.
yeah,
But like I think that's also a big part of it is like it's just it all comes back to what I was saying about being media spoiled before. You know what I mean? Like Dragon Ball, you would think would suffer from the same side effects in terms of like people becoming media spoiled, and
yeah,
we do suffer from that. There are people who are media spoiled in terms of Dragon Ball. They get tired of seeing
yeah,
the same transformations, the same, yada yada yada. Like that is a thing in Dragon Ball, but despite all of that, it has so much below the surface that you can enjoy. Despite
yeah,
the fact that you're seeing all this eye candy that you've seen before, like the transformation stuff like that, like what they do continues to be expansive, compelling, and interesting. That's the difference. You can have this weird, you can have this like surface level idea of enjoyment, and then also subtly create a rich, compelling experience for people. And that's what Western media in comparison lacks. It's not necessarily
yeah,
that they're not good at creating something that's like at a base level entertaining. It's just that if you want to remedy this, media spoiled effect, the best thing you can do is just make sure that at least beneath the surface that things are compelling and interesting. It doesn't even have to be compelling and interesting at a surface level. As long as there's like a lot of layers to it that people can like sit and ponder on and be entertained by for hours and hours and hours, that's where the money's at. People, and that's where the longevity of a product comes from. That's why
yeah,
Dragon Ball, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all this stuff is so popular because you can sit like there's so many different variations and build and things built around these stories for you to sit and ponder on and think on and enjoy. Like Dragon Ball is just particularly rich in comparison to most comic material. Not that comic material is not rich, not that it doesn't have like layers to it as well, but due to the fact that it's culturally nuanced and it's based around martial arts and Journey to the West and kung fu movies and Japanese pop culture and all of these things, there's like so many layers to it that you can read it once, turn around and read it again a few months later and get a completely different experience out of it because it's that rich in terms of its nuance and like what it has to offer. Like most media does not have that going for it. Most of it is you get what you get. What you see when you watch it the first time is what you're going to get out of it. In most cases, I'm not saying that's always the case because sometimes 2 or 3 rewatches you'll get a completely different experience out of it. But Dragon Ball consistently seems to be so popular because you can get a different experience out of it every time. You know what I mean? Like if you read like the latest chapters of Super and you apply that to the original series of Dragon Ball from way back in the day and you keep in mind the events of Super when you go do your reread, it completely changes the experience because then you have all of this stuff that happens in the future that you can be like, "Oh, look here, look there." Like you can make all these connections. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I
Like
was actually
there are
rewatching.
so many versions of Superman that you can't do that.
Yep.
You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't go back and be like, "Oh, look at I mean, you can to a degree, but not in the same way."
Yeah,
Like
it's
it's
a
just like,
totally different story. Yeah, you can't put them together. But like what you
mhm.
were saying with Super, Toriyama's good like that too. He'll put something in Super, and then when you go back and watch Z, you're like, oh shit, and even Dragon Ball. So
It's
yeah,
very clear. It's very clear that he uses his manga as a memory card
yeah,
just as much as he does Toyotaro. Like if he wants to like go back and remember something, it's very clear that he just goes back and rereads it. Like he
yeah.
doesn't try to like remind himself of it. He will legitimately just go read it so he can remember it that way. And
Yeah, I would do the same thing if I was in his shoes.
right. But
Same
that's
with
not always
Ichiro
how
Oda.
it's approached, though.
Yeah,
That's not always how it's approached. Like
and that's
he
probably why
like
he hired this guy who's pretty much like
some
his
people have too
backup.
big an ego. Some people have too big an ego to even. Some people like,
Yeah,
oh, I could write this better. I don't even need like screw that. I don't even need that old material. I can hate like especially in like a lot of these directors and a lot of these writers in like the modern era. They just assume they can do better.
yeah.
Like they don't even try
Two
to be
brains,
two
three
or three
brains are
sources.
always better than one. I've always said that when there's more minds on something, I think it'll turn out better.
Well, it
More
comes back to Dragon Ball
minds.
Evolution again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That had too many minds.
They did not care what the message of the original Dragon Ball was. They didn't care how they went about approaching it. They just assumed that they could do it in a way that could make them a lot of money.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like they just assumed that they could do it better in that way in terms of like making money. And that's the issue. Is like, yeah, of course everyone's goal is to make money. Of course Akira
yeah,
Toriyama's goal was to make money. But how he went about doing that is just entirely different. It's just like it's not the same thing. Like he created a product that has spanned longer than almost any product that's ever existed.
yeah. Because he
Just to
started.
be real honest about it, like not that Superman isn't comparable, not that a lot of these other, but in terms of like relevancy, in terms of people being like excited or hyped about something, I
Yeah,
mean, there are hardcore fans for every little subgenre of thing out there. But
but
like
Dragon Ball is a different
Dragon Ball
level.
is huge.
Yeah,
It's huge.
yeah. It's definitely in the billions. I don't think
Yeah.
many of anything have billions of fans. It's
Yeah.
not a lot, but
Yeah.
Dragon Ball is definitely one of them.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah,
For sure.
I want to actually make sure we talk about this because I feel like we cannot have this conversation of like the spins with Western media and superheroes without talking about shows like The Boys or Invincible, the show that I know Jordan for sure has seen here. one of the things that I think is very compelling is that when it comes to Invincible, they change up they massively change up what we view superheroes as. They make things a lot more gory. They really show a lot more destruction, and they really kind of try to, like, it's almost like what they're doing is that they're taking a lot of like the concept of getting DC characters, but then all of a sudden making them even more realistic, kind of making them I found that a lot more like shows who take the superhero genre in Western media and make them more edgy, make them more gory, have seen a lot of success. Not like
that is because it makes it compelling. That's because it makes it something. That's because it makes it something that's not held into these rigid plastic like boxes. You know what I mean? Like they're going above and beyond to something different. It's
Robert
like
Kirkman has a really interesting mind, though. He did Walking Dead, and the reason why he did that is he's like, I watch all the movies, but I always wanted to know what happened to the survivors after. That's why he made Walking Dead.
Right.
And then Invincible, like what you were saying, Starblast, it's much more violent than your basic comic book or animated series or movie. It's
also directly inspired from Dragon Ball.
Was it?
So it's like
it is.
Well, yeah,
Invincible.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You think the idea of a bunch of aliens coming to like reproduce and like destroy, like it's literally.
You know what? Yeah,
it's not that hard to see.
Well,
it's
you could
not
say
that
that,
hard
but
to see that.
Well, yeah, you could
It's
say
not
that,
that
but
hard
at the same time, I also feel like they basically took the Superman story and flipped it around, making it to where instead of like all these people of Krypton, they're like they're all dead, they're still alive. It basically flipped what we thought was like them taking like like a copycat reference of Superman and made it even more compelling in that regard.
I guarantee you, the guy who created that show is one of the biggest Vegeta fans that's ever lived.
You're probably right, though. It does sound like the Saiyans. They are conquerors in that regard, yes. But
he probably
I
is.
you added
He's
twist
like a
to
big
it.
geek. He's a big
I
geek.
would bet money on that. I would bet legitimate money on that, like $100.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. But yeah, I like his stuff, Robert Kirkman. He is he's one of those creators who just knows what people like, and he has a really unique writing mind. He's good at creating characters. But yeah, I like his stuff. Yeah, I learned about him from Walking Dead, and then I found out he did Invincible. And then The Boys is another good series like that too. That was based off a comic book. The creator hated comic book superheroes. He hated how they're all so powerful. He's like, let me just make my own thing and just make them. Because this is how superheroes, I feel like this is how superheroes would be in the world. They'd be more like celebrities getting paid.
They'd be narcissistic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah. The Boys definitely tackles that too.
Long power. Yeah. Definitely. So I feel like superheroes, they portray them more accurately than like a Marvel or DC or something.
Well, yeah, in most cases, there's that idea that even though they don't ever outwardly state this, there's always that idea that this person became a superhero because they have a good heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like in most cases, it's like these heroes, the reason they're heroes is because whether it be some sort of like parental guidance or some sort of like, motivation from some weird place. Like for some reason, they're always catered. The characters are always created to have naturally good hearts. You know what I mean? Which is why even when they become villains, they become anti-villains. They have some sort of weird justified. They have some sort of weird warped sense of justice where they feel like they're still doing the right thing. Like it's very rare that a villain becomes or that a hero becomes a straight up villain. It's very rare. In most cases, they come up with some weird justified reason for their actions.
Two-Face, good example.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and with and if you're a narcissist, if you will do that, but like the way that they approach narcissism and a lot of these other like modern it's more realistic. It's more like you can kind of see because these characters aren't self-aware of the comic book characters that we're talking about, like the old school comic book characters. Even when they're doing evil acts, they're not self-aware. They still think, like, they create this illusion that those characters still think that they're doing the right thing to a very pure degree. Whereas in a lot of these modern adaptations, that's not there. You can see that they actually know that they're full of shit. You know what I mean? Like, you can see in their eyes that they're like, I might say that, I'm justified in what I'm doing, but I know deep down, if you just look into the character's eyes, if you just look into their expression and the way that they handle what they're doing, there's conflict there. You can see that there is actually doubts that they are as good as they think they are. So that is a way more realistic approach to these characters in modern times. Like, in Invincible, they take that stance. Like, you can see that, like, despite the fact that his dad is a complete jerk, you can see that there is a little bit of a struggle in there in him. Like, it's much more realistic than it is like Superman. Like, whenever Superman finds out that Joker killed Lois, and he becomes a villain.
Yeah.
Like, he still feels like he's justified in his actions. There is no doubt in his eyes. He is just, like, completely dedicated to what he's doing. And in most of these characters, like, the characters are just more psychologically nuanced in a lot of, like, these new comics that are coming out. And that makes them more interesting. That makes them more compelling.
100%. Yep. It's not the same old rinse repeat that we were talking about the other day, where they just do the same type of comic book. Like you were saying, like most comic book characters.
We need nuance in media. We need stuff that's intriguing. We need stuff that grabs our attention. That's like,
unique, different, more, like you said, intriguing, interesting. It's you can't just keep giving the same thing over and over. Sometimes it works for a little bit, but then people
you become media spoiled, and then you're like, I'm tired of it.
Yeah. So,
you know what I mean, like, if it wasn't for the fact, here's the thing, like, I have to deal with a lot of Dragon Ball fans who complain about Dragon Ball. And the thing about it is that in a lot of cases, I actually relate to them, which is why I try really not to be a jerk to them. Because if I wasn't very studied on Eastern philosophy, Akira Toriyama's particular approach to the story, Journey to the West, stuff like that. Like, if I didn't, like, go out of my way to educate myself on, like, why Akira Toriyama specifically does what he does, I might get tired of it. You know what I mean? I might see a new transformation every couple months and be like, this is so repetitive and ridiculous, and I'm just so tired of this. Like, I could easily see myself getting to that point if I didn't realize that there was some, like, culturally nuanced richness underneath what's happening in the manga itself. You have to appreciate things for what they actually are. You can't just look at everything at a surface level. You have to actually understand the product that you're consuming and what they're trying, and the reasoning for the approach. In most cases, like, it's like expecting a little kid to watch, The Boys, or, someone who is not willing to use any critical thinking. It's like expecting them to be entertained by something that is nuanced. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to use critical thinking, if you're not going to, like, try really hard to analyze the media that you're taking in, you can't be fully entertained by it. You can't comprehend it to the full degree that the creator intends for you to. It's like I said, it's like a kid trying to watch an adult film. You don't have the correct context to understand exactly what's going on. You don't have the correct context to understand why things are being approached and portrayed the way that they are. That's a very important thing to have if you're going to correctly interpret and enjoy specific forms of media. Like Godzilla, for example, it just seems like a giant monster running around destroying a city. But if you understand the context behind it, and you understand all the deep, rich layers behind the creation and the story of Godzilla, it makes it a way more compelling and interesting story and concept. Like, you can't just take everything at a surface level. You know what I mean? Like
anime and manga, I feel like you need to go deep into it, because it's
Well, you
just
need to look at it
it's
as a localized product. It's a localized product. It is a product aimed at Japan. It is a product aimed at Japanese audiences, not you. So if you're not looking at it from the perspective of the intended audience, it's going to be really hard for you to understand what they're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
100.
the same reason that a lot of people looked at Superman back in the day and thought he was a douche, because they didn't have this weird veil of American patriotism convincing them that he's justified in his actions. Like that, how you interpret a piece of media is completely dependent on your culture, your upbringing, your understanding of where the creator is coming from, what his intentions are, what his inspirations are. Like, people really undersell exactly what you need to enjoy media to the highest degree. People just think, oh, anybody can enjoy it at the same level at all times, and that is just objectively and factually false. It's just not true.
Yeah.
If one person
You're saying
who
some of, like the truest shit I ever heard right now.
This is
Like
great.
what you're saying is so it's so factual. So it's
yeah,
it makes sense 100%. But
yeah, and I think, and I'm understanding of this, and that's the reason that a lot of times when I see somebody complaining about something, like, I'm just like, you know, if I could like beam context into your brain, like if I had that superpower, I would do it, but I don't. So it's
yeah.
just like, I'm not gonna judge you, and I'm just gonna move on.
Yeah,
You know what I
sometimes
mean?
people won't like something, but they, like you said, don't not just do their research, but they don't know
Context.
that, yeah, they don't understand it, so they're complaining about something they don't properly understand,
Mm-hmm.
which you understand, but if you try to explain it to them, they might not fully understand it unless they actually go and
Make the effort. Yeah, you have to actually make the effort. Like, you have to
I did.
actually you have to actually want. And here's the thing: if you're gonna make the argument that that is too much of an expectation for you to enjoy a product, I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm not gonna argue with you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually a realistic take. That's actually a realistic take.
A big
Like,
like
yeah.
example is like obviously like Gohan Beast and an Orange Piccolo in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, because they don't understand that the deeper layers of that movie is obviously Piccolo and Gohan's relationship and such, and on the surface, because of and you can't even blame them, for thinking
yeah,
of it like this, because on the very surface of the movie, it's very simple, it's very like straightforward. They don't really like make it obvious that they are playing on themes. A lot of the ways that they did stuff in the movie was so much more subtle than it's ever actually been, that I feel like in some ways like hurts the movie a little bit. I don't. It's not even Toriyama's fault, but I feel like with the way that Toei
he's
managed.
just doing what they are just doing what they've always done. The thing about it is just like, as Dragon Ball grows in popularity, that problem is going to become more prominent, and that's
Yeah.
just the reality. Like, there's going to be more people who don't, they're not in on the joke. They don't understand exactly what's going on, and so you're going to have, like, the more popular it gets, the more you're just going to naturally going to have to deal with that. That's just how it works, and that's just something I've come to terms with. Like, I know a lot of people who can't stand seeing Dragon Ball get criticized or talk bad about it or whatever. To me, it's just like, it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's the reality of the
Yeah.
situation. You can't expect the entire world to understand or look things the way you do. It's just a reality. Like, it's just the
Yeah,
truth.
that'll never happen.
Yeah. So, like, just take what people say with a grain of salt and just enjoy things the way that, just enjoy things yourself. Who
I
cares?
feel like people just
You know
need
what I
to
mean?
enjoy things a little more too, because
Well, yeah, I can't stand. Well, here's the thing.
they just
What,
hate
what,
everything.
well, you know why? Because there's a motivation to hate everything. There is literally actual motivation to
Yeah.
hate media in the modern day, and that is hate tweets. Like,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
if you get on Twitter and your brain is looking for validation, and you're just, like, all you have to do is just make a very with zero critical thinking, just
Yep.
make any sort of criticism that causes somebody to to think the least amount possible in order to agree with it, and then they will just naturally agree with it without thinking about it, and then you get your validation, and boom, it's a win-win for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
there's and that's why a lot of this stuff is just fabricated. A lot of it's just fake. A lot of this stuff is just people not using. If they used even a minor amount of critical thinking, they wouldn't come to the conclusion that they come to in most cases. In most cases, if they use even a minor amount, they wouldn't come to the same conclusion. But they don't want to do that because using critical thinking and then posting something after using said critical thinking, you set up the expectation for the person who read it to also do the exact same thing. Whereas if you post something simple and hateful, that requirement's not there. They don't have to put any thought into it. They can just see it and be like, you know what? Yeah.
You're right.
Make this segment into a YouTube short.
I will. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, like that just, you know, that is just like so completely true. It's just like a lot of the ways that the modern media and Twitter and everything, it's like they're taking the entertainment aspect and such, and it's actually bringing it down a lot of like the very like themes without actually trying to use the thinking to understand the media. And it's like it really is like, it kind of sucks because it's like all of the things that people are very critical of. You know, they you know, like when it comes to like Western media versus Eastern media, it's like because some people do not have the ability to want to understand, you know, some of the Eastern media. It's like they're criticizing it like it's Western media. When at that very moment, it's like in a lot of ways that media is giving them the exact same thing, is the exact very thing that they've actually been wanting. They just don't realize
the saddest part of all of that is how much breath and time is wasted.
Yeah.
That's honestly, when I think about that, the most depressing part of all that is like all of the breath and time that was wasted. We only have so much finite time on this earth, and the idea that I wasted any amount of time hating on something because I didn't understand it would drive me nuts. You know what I mean?
See, me, if I don't understand something or if I don't have knowledge about something, I'm not going to dislike it.
Well, yeah, most people are like that, but not
it.
everybody.
Yeah, some people you'll just never get.
Well, they want that dopamine hit and they want that validation. You have to be a pretty secure person to have that approach. If you're if you're even a relatively insecure person, you're going to have the opposite approach. You're going to look for the first criticism that you can make a clout tweet about.
Yeah.
And you're just going to latch onto that, and that's going to be your daily routine, and you're going to eventually get addicted to it. You're literally going to become an addict.
With YouTube comments, you see a bunch of great ones, and you see that one bad one. Don't let that phase you. It's just one person.
You are describing the Dragon Ball fandom like to a T right now.
And the figure community, wrestling community, every community.
Yeah, the Dragon Ball fandom. If the Dragon Ball fandom ever became self-aware, of how much of their antics are just straight up hormones and weird like psychological cues, it would blow their mind. Like even the majority of the internet, like if they actually knew how much of their actions are just based in basic psychology, they would like it would. Some people would have a midlife crisis because they'd be like, "Oh wow, like have all these decisions I made actually been my own, or is this just me like?" Or am I just like a slave to like social media and the effect that it has on my psychology and like my decision making processes? You know, so like if a lot of these people ever became self aware, they would definitely question themselves, and they would definitely become much more productive members of society if they were aware of the fact that like a lot of decisions and a lot of things they do are just for validation. It's just to reaffirm your identity, to make you feel good about yourself, to get that dopamine hit. You know what I mean? Like if a lot of these people knew that, they would probably like stray from social media a little bit.
Well, look
You know what I
at
mean?
like,
So, not all of them. Some of them would be like, I don't care.
yeah,
I'm just
not
in it for
everybody's
the
like that, but there is
yeah.
there's a chunk of people like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the majority of people aren't self-aware. You know what I mean? The majority of people
Yeah.
are not self-aware. But
Yeah.
if they were self-aware, there would be a lot of people who would be like, "Wait a minute. I need to take a break from social media. I need to
Yeah.
get my mind right. I need to stop worrying about this so much. I need to stop chasing validation." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes social media can be a bad thing in itself, though.
well, yeah,
But
And then it's like, and then here's to play devil's advocate. It's like you have a lot of these like Western filmmakers who are literally looking at Twitter instead of like seeing it as an avenue, like like for like what it is. They're legitimately taking it as advice and like, oh, this is
Yep.
constructive criticism, and then they're trying to build like some sort of product that is
So
meant to
bad.
appease these people off of Twitter, and then it ultimately fails because they do not understand the concept.
They
of
don't
the
even
Twitter
know
social
what they
media.
actually want. I'm glad you
Yes.
mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I've actually meant to say that a few times since we've been talking. It would be a nightmare to work in the entertainment industry. It would be a
oh
nightmare. You do not know if what you're reading is actual criticism or if it's just a clout tweet. You don't know. You don't know. You can't
Yeah.
tell.
yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're reading it, you're like, oh, is this a legit criticism? Like, did we really mess up there? Or is this person just saying whatever they need to say to get
You never know
to
if
get
someone's trolling
knowledge?
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would suck. It would suck. Like you remember back in the day, whenever I'm pretty old, so maybe you guys don't remember. But like
I'm
back in the
38.
day, yeah, you're older than me then. But they would give
Yeah.
you these like forms for you to fill out to like rate a product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'd be like, "How was this product?" Like it was like, it's the internet. They do that
Rate
on the
it on a
internet.
scale
But
from
back
1
in
to
the day,
5.
they would like hand you a thing, and you would like fill it out, and you'd be like, you know, like we see that on such a massive scale on the internet, on Twitter, and that being mixed up with people being disingenuous about their takes for the sake of clout creates this weird dynamic where you can't if you were in the entertainment industry and you were looking for actual criticism and you were looking for actual guidance in terms of what people actually want, it would be near impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And like basically case in point, it's just like the internet is not the place for that because it's they take, and it's part of the reason why in a lot of ways like society is actually like like declining in its intelligence and its integrity is because the placement of the internet is actually hurting a lot, like and bringing down a lot of the things that I feel like they that are actively meant to kind of to kind of increase the ability of our society
Well, yeah, it's not the internet, it's the people.
Yeah.
It's not the internet, it's the people.
but the
I want
internet
to stress
is the
that
tool that allows that the people to expand their words all over the place.
before we go though,
Yeah.
I just want to stress that the internet itself is not the issue. It's the people using the internet that is the issue. We are not necessarily ready to use it to its full extent, and that's not necessarily our fault. But I'm not one of these people that's like anti-internet because I do think that it can serve to accelerate our development as a species because it's like an experience that we need to go through in order to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So,
This was such an interesting episode. It's just like we're talking about the difference between Eastern and Western media, and then next thing you know, it's like a lot of that ultimately has to do with the internet and the constructive criticism. This was okay. Gosh, we hit the one. We hit an hour and hour and minutes. But anyways, guys, let us know what you think down in the comment section down below. Tell me what you guys think about this entire episode. This has been Jordan the Dragon Lee, alongside with Daredevil 19 and Starblast Studios. We hope you guys did enjoy. We'll see you in the comment section. Until then,
don't be too controversial.
Yeah, let's be better than the internet trolls.
Thanks for listening to our episode. If you're on YouTube and watch the video, then thank you for watching as well. We are your hosts, Starblast Studios, and me, Daredevil 19. And if you enjoyed our episode on Spotify, be sure to give us a follow and a rating. And we do thank you. And if you did watch this on YouTube, be sure to give a like if you liked it, and a subscribe if you enjoyed it. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Plastic Power Podcast.